Global financial markets are mostly down. Bitcoin is plunging. This is something we talked about on the show. I believe we predicted a price or looked at a model that predicted that Bitcoin would go to 70,000. Lucas, you're saying we might even see lower Bitcoin prices than that. We might see this go as low as 50 or even $40,000, which would cause a significant amount of concern for the people that are running the network, those that are running miners. But what does this have to do with the London squeeze? Because I know we've talked about this as well, but like, are all these things connected?
They certainly are connected. I don't know that anyone can know how or the timing of how they're being manipulated, but what we do know is that the Trump administration has been very concerted in trying to not only take the hub of international banking into the United States and to move it not to the Federal Reserve in New York City, but directly to the Treasury in Washington D.C., and that they have been making some well orchestrated moves in in trying to in trying to um, discombobulate the London banking system. We saw
This is related to some of the LIBOR, SOFR changes and that we've already spoken about. So this is directly in line with the trying to move the banking system off of the LIBOR rate onto SOFR, centering it in U.S. Treasury out of London.
yes, and again and adding to that a couple of other aspects, the creation of stable coins that are backed um, by the United States treasuries, an expectation of those stable coins being able to move those treasuries around the world. The announcements of the Trump administration recently with regards to 50-year mortgages. That's going to be a massive tool in the hand of the Treasury of the federal government for for implementing or spreading this Treasury system dollar throughout America, and the world will probably follow. We're also seeing now some ripples with regards to settlements of the status of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac that were taken into governor conservatorship back during the Obama administration and have remained there throughout all of these years. I don't know if the Trump administration necessarily wants to take them out uh, maybe a nationalized status, but they certainly want to quell the ambiguity that surrounds them since that temporary solution during the Obama administration. So we've got all that going on. I've wondered, some of the asset classes that we've seen affected were gold, silver, oil. We've also just had Mohammed bin Salam, leader of Saudi Arabia, visiting the United States. A deal was crafted there, and MBS and the United States seem to be affirming their relationship. I think in part that has to do um, with the United States also trying to secure or to exert some sort of control over oil as an asset class. And we should not be surprised to see them also making moves on crypto. And if you want to be uh, manipulating or managing, you choose your word. Crypto, it starts with Bitcoin. We've also seen leading up to this,
Well,
the
yeah,
creation.
a lot of the crypto markets are still trading extremely correlated, and when you see Bitcoin drop, oftentimes you see these altcoins taking an even harder beating. So if Bitcoin drops 5%, sometimes the rest of the crypto market can drop 10% or 20%. So this has definitely been correlated, and we haven't seen any evidence that there are really many coins that trade not in lockstep with Bitcoin.
And Bitcoin, especially due to its market cap, due to the decentralized um, uh, the decentralized basis of that it has of its being, makes it a threat to sovereign currencies. And the United States can um, it can see some benefits for Bitcoin, but ultimately it would prefer to see, especially United States citizens, and cross our fingers, maybe the world using United States treasuries, but not being able to insulate themselves from the control or the wishes of the American federal government by jumping into these other asset classes, gold, silver, oil, or Bitcoin. So whenever I saw the push and the gates opening up for the ETFs, Bitcoin, first we saw the Bitcoin ETFs. A lot of the crypto community lauded that as, oh, we're finally gaining acceptance. But I thought about the gold seizures of FDR's administration, and when the Federal Reserve, under the direction of FDR back in the 30s, um, began to confiscate all the gold of the American citizens, some of the political concerns at the time were, well, what are these poor blue collar workers and farmers across America? Um, what if this is a step too far and this leads them in across the threshold of revolt? And the solution that they came up with was to create a paper gold market. And they said, well, if the people, if we can open up some sort of window that people can buy paper certificates that say that they're entitled to gold to be delivered at some point in the future, and they can trade those paper slips with regards to their gold, that will alleviate some of this fascination and fixation on gold. And FDR even went further to, once that system began to be set up, he began to manipulate the gold exchange rate. And he manipulated it because he wanted some of the he wanted to restart the American economy through excitement over this derivatives market. What will the gold price be in 2 or 3 days? Will it be up? Will it be down? Oh, something must be happening. And that's essentially a good description of how our global financial economy works today. So, one, who's going to be in control of that? What are the asset classes that are underpinning some of this derivatives market? But the United States hasn't abandoned that. It uses that tool with Bitcoin, with other crypto assets. So
Well, speaking of revolt, we've also got this video that's been put out by Democratic, is it senators that did this, that are saying it's okay to disobey unlawful orders. And this is also something that we covered in a previous show, where we talked about, is that really practicable? What would occur? And, can we expect to see this? And Trump has not taken this video very kindly, is saying that this is a seditious act, and that the punishment for this seditious act ought to be meted out.
I don't know. I don't agree with the punishable by death. It's not that I take exception to whether that's on the table, but I do think that Trump is using that language to call attention to the severity of this video. And I don't believe it's any senators. It's maybe they are.
Well, I know
Slotkin.
that, what's his name, Kelly, Mark Kelly, the senator from Arizona. I believe he's in there.
Oh, that's right. He is a senator. Okay, well, senators and representatives alike. I just knew Jason Crow. He's a rep in in Colorado. Um, yeah, we did talk about this, and remember what Douglas McGregor said. He said that the service members of the United States should not kid themselves and fall victim to the rhetorical logic of now Mark Kelly, I can't think of his name, General Milley, who disobeyed Donald Trump in Trump's first administration, and Douglas McGregor said that was incredibly dishonorable, and it was dishonorable because the oath that that General Milley took not only binds binds service members to the Constitution, an oath to the Constitution, but the second clause of that oath is an oath to obey the President of the United States as their commander in chief.
Yeah, the commander in chief part of the oath, that it very much seems like trying to disobey an order and getting away with it seems fraught with peril. I can't imagine how that could possibly go well for someone trying to do that. It's not like these seditious six. It's not like Mark Kelly's going to have your back or even be able to do anything for you if you were to do this, and not to mention the chaos that it's going to cause in the middle of an operation or whatever it is that the military is doing at the time.
And I think Donald Trump's the the extremes of his rhetoric, I think, are very important, because it's not just the claims that are made by the seditious six, is that there's a bunch of service members who are listening to them and are going to this is a much deeper security threat than Julian Assange publishing United States cables on WikiLeaks, and go back to all of the hoopla that was made about that. This could be catastrophic for the military, and Donald Trump also, Donald Trump aside, Douglas McGregor said that there, and I defer to him. He's a colonel. He was an advisor to the Secretary of Defense. The Trump and even Bobby Kennedy were listening to Douglas McGregor's advice. So, he said there's a route for service members who don't agree with their orders, and that's to resign. And then once their active duty status has languished, and they want to talk about what they thought with regards to their orders, then they can go out and talk about it. And I think the Trump administration has intentionally been trying to bait service members into doing exactly that. And I think that they see the problems of the military in other countries around the world, and how militaries are used to overthrow the governments of various countries around the world. And the United States is not immune to that political play. Again, there are so many similarities to the time where our country is today and the time leading into the Second World War with FDR, the Great Depression that brought FDR to office, the socialist policies that he was turning to that really flew in the face of free market capitalism. We don't call them socialism. The Trump administration is very, very adroit in avoiding that word today, but they instead talk about the American system and fair market capitalism. But socialism was a word that was used intentionally to poison the minds of American and other colonies around the world who were trying to disassociate themselves from the free market system. So much of that still remains the same. What happened back during FDR's, I believe it was his second term, whenever he was making, whenever he was throwing together the New Deal here in America, several leaders of corporations on Wall Street asked the most popular general in America at the time, Smedley, if he would start participate in a coup against FDR. And this is not something that any American hears about today. It's been ostensibly written out of our history books along with Paul Robeson. Um, but that happened in America, and Donald Trump is very susceptible to those same processes happening today.
Did I get
You
the
know,
right guy? Is it Smedley Butler?
yeah, Smedley Darlington Butler, which is a
Nice.
great middle name. Yeah, he was a Marine. He opened Quantico. He was the um, he presided over Haiti before Haiti fell into the hands of the gangsters of Haiti, Papa Doc, et cetera, et cetera. He was a, we know about Patton, and there's a and MacArthur, and many people revel in the eccentricities of their characters, and dote on their military campaigns. Nobody knows about Smedley Butler, but he was right up there, and maybe surpassed both. Well, certainly MacArthur, maybe Patton. Very interesting man, but we don't hear about him today. Why don't we hear about him? Because he turned on the corporate cabal that asked him to overthrow FDR. And he told about the plot. Nobody believed it for years. And he was written off as a crazy man. But then lo and behold, documents began to trickle out of the government 10, 15, 20 years later, a generation later. And his claims about the plot to orchestrate a coup against FDR turned out to be absolutely true to the hilt. So this happened in America. Nobody knows about it. Donald Trump was the victim of not just one but two assassination attempts during his campaign. I was reminded recently. I mean, this whole sedition video. There's much that underpins it, and I was reminded of Tucker Carlson talking to Donald Trump during the campaign, and Tucker Carlson said, "You better not pick Marco Rubio to be your vice president, or you'll be assassinated." And I was shocked. I was shocked when Tucker Carlson said that, but he was right. Why did he say that? Because Marco Rubio represents the neoconservative wing of the Republican Party. Neoconservative is a euphemism for liberal. Liberal doesn't mean blue hair and body piercings and sexual perfidy. It means they embrace the free market liberal order of the British Empire.
And so if Marco Rubio had been picked, then they would have got the guy they wanted, and so they could just move through Trump, assassinate him, and pick up Marco Rubio, and we'd be right back to the London banking cartel being in control.
Absolutely. And instead, who did Trump go with? He went with J.D. Vance, an author, a former serviceman from poor inner from poor Appalachia, from Kentucky. Wasn't he from Kentucky? I know he's moved to Ohio, but I believe he grew up in Kentucky. Um, and J.D. Vance. J.D. Vance is the one who brought Curtis Yarvin to Donald Trump. So JD, in our minds today, we have these memes of fat baby-faced J.D. Vance. But J.D. Vance is more so America first, I would say, than Donald Trump. And if we think back to the leaked signal exchange that was leaked by a neocon, who did not like the pushback that the Trump administration was giving to the war hawks with regards to the bombings in Yemen. Remember, it was J.D. Vance who said, "What has Europe ever done for us?" And why are we exerting so much United States blood, sweat, and treasure with regards to protecting them and securing the safety of the passage of these ships that are not bringing goods to the United States but bringing them to Europe. And that's how JD Vance thinks. So that was a great insurance policy for Donald Trump in giving I guess setting up another hurdle for for free market forces that might have thought to unseat Donald Trump going forward. But that said, that just raises the stakes. And what does it raise the stakes to? It says, oh well, maybe we need to work on the legislative branch and the judicial branch to try to cause more unrest and greater pandemonium in the American federal government system. And that's exactly what this Slotkin Seditious 6 video is laying the groundwork for.
I don't expect to see this significantly doing anything in the minds of the military, but is this indicative of things that are being said behind closed doors? If we're seeing senators and representatives coming out and giving this guidance, trying to get people to do this or saying this publicly, does it give us any indication what they might be saying privately?
Well, I think maybe I might put, if I consider that, and I didn't serve in the military. Rusty, you might have a lot to add in this. But if I'm thinking about how to manipulate the military or what their responses might be, I would say I'd put two baskets for it. One, there are people who aren't that who look at their military service as a job, and they didn't have maybe the best options, so they took the route of the military. When I was watching the you know, some of the reports back from the operations against Yemen by the Navy a couple of months ago, some people said, "Oh, the Navy is it's not the Navy that was in World War II." I thought, well, I think there's a lot of people in there dragging their feet. I think there's a generation of Americans who say, "What are we doing here? Why are we here?" And but there's another basket of, I think, people who join the military because they have very deep-seated ideas about honor, about service, about America. And those are the minds that video was aimed at. And those soldiers with a lot of zeal can have a larger effect on maybe a broader swath of people who look at military service as a job. So it's not an inconsequential video at all, because part of the problem with zealots is they already have preconceived notions of morality. And so if you're trying to manipulate them, then all you have to do is find an avenue to establish the narrative in your favor, and they will begin to discount some of the policies, the history, the legacy of the military that has been organized and designed to make them very effective tools for American defense or American war.
Rusty, do you have any thoughts on that? I'm very curious to hear your perspective on seeing a video like this. If you had seen that, yeah,
My
go ahead.
my thoughts on it, as somebody who did serve in the Marine Corps, I think to that point that Lucas just said, it's not the same military as World War II. Well, it's not the same military that I joined even 20 years ago. There's a lot of things that are different. They put the timeout cards for the people in the Army boot camps, where if it gets too rough on you, you can take a timeout and you can just pause. And we can't just go in there and beat the people and to making them the way we want them to. We've got to treat them with respect, and we got to be open, and we got to be welcoming to their identifying personalities. If they want to switch over to a female from a male, we got to accept that, and we can't be against that. And that's a lot different military than World War II, or even when I was in. Boot camp wasn't something that was fun when I went into the military. Boot camp was still seen as a way to weed people out of the military to like Grant was saying, those people that may be prone to disobeying the orders of the people in charge of them. They kind of get identified early on in their career as being prone to that type of mentality, and they get weeded out. They get taken out. There was a couple people that I know of, even when I went through boot camp, that they were systematically taken out. I remember there was one guy in my unit. He was trained beyond normal people, and he ended up gaining stress fractures in both of his hips. Neither of those stress fractures were ever identified or taken care of, and they just kept on blowing off his request for pain until one day we were going in line to the bathroom, and he was a little bit slower than the person ahead of him. And so the guy behind him said, why don't you hurry up, and pushed him. And when he pushed him, he hit a wall and shattered both of his hips, became wheelchair bedridden for the rest of his life. Now, I'm not saying that that's good and that's right, but that's the way the military was, and that's the way the military is. It's got some of those hard aspects that people don't like to talk about, but that's what makes it work. And even when I was in the Marine Corps, I saw that as starting to be faded out, as starting to be weeded out, and that the way the military was looked at was changing. And I hear a lot of people say, oh, they want to quit the military because of Trump. They don't like the military, all this stuff. Well, I can say the same exact thing when I got out of the military about Obama. I got out in 2007, 2008, right when Obama was getting elected as president, and I knew things were going to be different. I knew things were going to be changed now, the way we came into Afghanistan, the way we went into wars, and the way that the military was looked at. And I knew that Obama coming in was going to be negative for the military, and I wanted to get away from that. And that's one of the, I can say that's one of the reasons I decided to leave the military, was because I saw that the regime change and the way the military was changing from the way it was. And I'm one of those people that I think that the harder and the way it was right. And that these, I hate to call them weak ass people in the military nowadays, they wouldn't make it through World War II, and they're not going to be the people we can rely on to make it through the next wars.
Rusty, this, as you describe that time and that change in the military, it brings to mind Bo Bergdahl. Remember, Bo Bergdahl walked off his base in Afghanistan, and he said later that he signed up for the military because he wanted to go fight a war, and he didn't think that he was going to be sent to a foreign country and told to pass out packages of food and rations and to be a police force. And I thought about Bo Bergdahl whenever Donald Trump changed the, there were many I think there were many very strategic and probably very correct reasons for Donald Trump to rename the Department of Defense the War Department, and that had everything from removing a tool of rhetoric from war hawks in Washington, and also setting up the narrative in order to begin to say, what is our military force for?
Well, and then we had the meeting too, where they pulled all of the generals in and said, if you don't like the way that the military is being run, you could resign. I mean, that meeting occurred as well.
Well, absolutely, and that meeting was convened in order to force out some of these people who say, "Oh, our military needs to be around the world, needs to be defending people." No, Donald Trump said the military needs to be a precision force that responds, that answers to the president, that we use for war, not some sort of politician's tool to coerce the other countries around the world. But the fallout that we need to have from that meeting is to have the people that disagree to resign. And here we have the members of Congress who are upset that this tool is being ripped out of their hands, trying to subvert the chain of command and recording a video that says to the serviceman, you know, you answer to the Constitution, and the subtext there is, we're part of the legislature. We write the laws. We're closer to the Constitution than the president, and that is sedition. It's the very definition of sedition. So this is a problem for Donald Trump. The Trump administration needs to put the kibosh on it. I hope that they can persuade the American people to understand how very important it is that we have a military, that the military has a chain of command, and that the members of Congress aren't trying to subvert that chain of command. Again, I don't think
now give me a historical perspective on this. How likely is it that we would see these individuals marched in chains like Luigi Mangione? Like, is this possible? Are we going to see these representatives and senators actually moved upon, or is this just empty rhetoric? Has this occurred in the past? Has there ever been members of Congress charged with sedition and marched in front of some sort of, is this a military tribunal?
So, well, one, it's not a military tribunal because they're no longer active duty service members. Of course, there's precedent. Abraham Lincoln threw the representative of Maryland in jail. Why? Because Maryland was not allowing the federal troops. This is before we had any concept of a standing federal military. The troops were named according to the areas of their operation, and Lincoln wanted to send federal troops across Maryland, and Maryland, the state of Maryland did not want to allow federal troops to cross their fields, to cross their bridges. And Abraham Lincoln's response was to throw a whole bunch of people in jail, including members of the House of Representatives. And that was in 1862. So
were they charged with sedition? This seems like a bigger deal, but maybe I'm not thinking with enough historical perspective that maybe there have been seditious things that have occurred, especially during the Civil War, which everything always revolves on Civil War.
There's more. I don't want to get too caught up in what they're charged under, because I think that there's more of a question of power here. And Donald Trump also understands his power. What has he said to the federal government and to these federal judges who are issuing orders? Let them enforce it. They want to make these rulings. Let them enforce it. And this is hearkening back into an older understanding about the balance of power. This is why, if you go back to older Supreme Court rulings, they'll issue a mandamus, but that mandamus, they're not trying to coerce one person to enter their mind and to force their will. They're taking advantage of other institutions. So they'll write a mandate, for whatever other governmental body there may be, but they're relying on the communication and the ability of other groups of people to work together. There's been a great assumption of power by the federal government, but it's Donald Trump, rather than fighting it directly, engaging in it rhetorically, has learned the trick of asking them to prove their power. And I think that's part of his selection of language here. No, I don't think that I don't think that these members are going to be arrested. I don't think that they're going to be killed. There might be some sort of movement at some point to have their committee assignments stripped from them. There might be a movement amongst their constituencies to have them recalled. I doubt it. These people are probably operating from bases of power that are
safe, very safe.
Yeah, very, very safe. So I don't think that it's in the interest of the Republicans or the Trump administration to um, to harm their bodies, but I think the rhetoric is aimed at causing people to begin to take to realize how very serious and seditious they're, this video that they released was. And maybe the audience that it's most crafted to reach are servicemen, so that there's not just some sort of no response to this video that further widens the door to service members pushing back on their chain of command. um, Trump's rhetoric is calculated to make them say, "Oh, wait a second, you know, a member of the House of Representatives or the United States Senate might be insulated from the blowback from in engaging in this sort of thought, or these actions, but that how far is that going to run? I doubt that runs to too many generals, and that's a message that Trump is sending. Um, but the reps and civilians will be protected, but this message it's aimed at the service members, and Trump is saying, if you don't like it, you can leave. And that's actually what the Trump administration would like to see. They would like to see a much smaller military. And I'm also reminded of Clinton.
A smaller military and one that's more aligned with an older style of military. I think that what Rusty was describing, the type of military that the U.S. has had in the past, I think that this is the kind of military that Pete Hegseth and J.D. Vance and Donald Trump, they want a military like that, not the military that they inherited from Barack Obama.
Absolutely. And let's go back to Clinton, because Clinton, Clinton came into office after the collapse of the Soviet Union. And there was expectation at the time that, people were saying, oh, well, we can begin to cut the defense budget. We don't have to spend all of this money on fighting Russia. And Bill Clinton started closing bases around the United States, and there was an absolute uh, a, 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 a silent insurrection of that time. And Bill Clinton's response was to turn to Serbia and Bosnia Herzegovina and NATO, and start the litany of NATO wars that we've had in Europe, because he realized then, like, oh, I can't cut and get rid of the military, because they are too powerful. And so instead, he found somewhere else for them to go. Well, Donald Trump had learned in his first administration that he can't cut and end those operations in Asia and in Europe. And so instead, what he had to do was to find somewhere else for them to go, Venezuela. And now he can't cut and end. He can't issue edicts that we're going to downsize the military. So he operates in a different fashion. He insults them. He asks them to do things that they don't want to do, and then dares them to resign. So he's got to continue to set up that pathway for their resignations if he's going to get to this small reactive war force instead of the defense force. But that's what you're absolutely right. That's exactly what he wants.
I think that's about all the time we've got. Any last thoughts before we wrap it up for today?
Just one quick one. The Slotkin video ended with "Don't give up the ship," and I thought that was so fascinating, because the free trade order is very much aligned with shipping, very much aligned with high velocity banking that revolves around a world that's relied on shipping and relied on financial financial bets on a shipping world. And so when I saw the video, it just seemed to me not ironic that was the line that they closed with. It was also a rallying cry from 1812, a war that America has forgotten. And who was that war against? It was against the British shipping empire. And that war was carried out through the British colony of Canada, which still lies on our northern border today. And so it just seemed to me a very, very a very good summary of the same problem that we've dealt with in the history of America that's still here today. So that's all I got. Enjoyed it.
All right. We'll see you next time on FOMO.